Hello, dreamers. Tonight, we are stepping into the delicious, impossible space between what you feel and what you know. You lie there, body still, yet your mind floats just above your skin, aware of the blankets, the hum of the fan, the distant echoes of your day. And in that breathless space before sleep, you realize something strange. You've never once truly heard silence. Maybe you think silence is the absence of sound, but tonight, as the darkness folds around you, listen closer. There's always something: your heartbeat, the swirl of blood in your ears, the memory of a voice, the after image of a laugh that's long since faded. And suddenly, a strange paradox: silence is always filled with something. So what is it you're really hearing? There's a strange comfort in realizing that nothingness has texture. If you try to hear the exact moment between now and now, you can't. It slips. Your attention becomes the flashlight that erases the darkness it tries to illuminate. This is the sound of now, the feeling that time is happening, but only just out of reach. You chase the moment, but it's always a beat ahead, or worse, already behind. You probably wouldn't survive this line of thinking, by the way. Just kidding. Sort of. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment below with where you're listening from and what time it is. Midnight in Montreal, 3 a.m. in Tokyo. I want to know. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Your senses are tuned to the room, the gentle creak of the walls, the ghost soft sigh of your bedsheets shifting. But the more you pay attention, the more things start to unravel. Like if you close your eyes and listen for the next sound, how long until you realize that waiting is a kind of expectation that already shifts your experience. You're not really listening for nothing. You're listening for something to end the nothing. And in that expectation, you alter what silence actually is. That's the weird part about awareness. It's not passive. It reshapes everything it touches. And the moment you notice this, something even stranger begins to whisper at the edge of your thoughts. If the present is made of what your attention highlights, and silence is always pregnant with subtle motion, is there ever truly a moment of pure, uninterrupted now? Breathe in, hold, exhale. Even that action becomes a metronome, a rhythm against which your mind tries to anchor itself. But anchoring to time is like trying to build a house on the ocean. The waves are always moving, and yet, paradoxically, you never feel completely lost. You trust that the next moment will come. You trust that breath will follow breath. You trust in something invisible, something no one has ever actually seen, the continuity of the now. And yet, philosophers still wonder, what is a moment if it can't be isolated? Picture this. Somewhere deep in a rainforest, a frog croaks, and a single drop of rain slides down a waxy green leaf. That sound is a now. But by the time you imagine it, the moment is already over. Worse, it was never truly real for you to begin with. Your now was built on memory and imagination, and maybe that's all any now ever is. This is where things get a little quantum. In physics, there's this phenomenon where particles only behave a certain way when you observe them. You observing the system becomes part of the system, and suddenly, awareness isn't a passive lens, it's a player, an influence, a twist in the script. So imagine your consciousness as a flashlight sweeping over a vast, black landscape. Wherever the beam lands, reality springs into being. But here's the question. Is there a true now that exists outside your spotlight? Or is the act of noticing the very thing that creates the moment? Let's make it more personal. Have you ever been so deep in thought that when someone says your name, it startles you? It's like being yanked back into existence. But where were you before that? Were you anywhere? Was time still happening? Or did you vanish into some kind of temporal coma? Some traditions suggest that the you who lives in the now is just a momentary flicker, a thought sparked by another thought, wrapped in awareness, a flame that looks steady but is constantly being recreated. And if that's true, who exactly is listening right now? Don't worry, we'll come back to this. In fact, we'll keep looping around this question like a spiral staircase, each turn familiar but higher. Later, we'll explore what memory has to say about the now, how future you might be shaping your present, and whether language itself is stealing your chance at being fully alive. But for now, you just lie there, suspended in a kind of humming paradoxical stillness. You are both here and not here, awake but dreaming, conscious but drifting. And somewhere in the distance, the place beyond thought, beyond time, a door has just opened. You didn't hear it, you can't see it, but a part of you already walked through. You see yourself in the mirror, not just the surface level you, the one who knows how to smile on cue, the one who tilts their head just right to check for flaws, the one who recognizes features but not origins. No, tonight you see something else, something older, something that might have been watching you long before you knew what mirrors were. The glass doesn't lie, but it doesn't tell the truth either. It simply reflects a mechanical echo of your light and shadow, returning to you a vision of yourself that's always a tiny bit delayed. Think about that. What you see in a mirror is already the past, not just metaphorically, but physically. Light takes time to bounce, so even your own face is a memory disguised as a presence. And if that's not strange enough, ask yourself this. When you look into the mirror, who's really observing? Is it you looking out, or is there something in the reflection that's trying to look in? The ancients thought mirrors were portals, not just folklore. They believed that mirrors trapped a version of you, a ghost of your moment, frozen behind the surface, like a painting that could blink. In some cultures, people would cover mirrors after a death, worried the soul might get lost in the glass. There's a kind of uncanny logic in that, because what if reflections don't just mimic you? What if they remember you? Take this further. You walk past a storefront window and catch a glimpse of your reflection, but you weren't trying to look. Still, for a brief second, you see yourself, but it feels like someone else, slightly unfamiliar, slightly off. That version of you was shaped by a slant of light, a moment of emotion, a flicker of posture, and yet that version is real. It happened. It existed, but only in glass. Now stretch this into a metaphor. The mirror is your mind. It reflects thoughts, memories, habits, and yet you often mistake the reflection for the truth. If your mind tells you you're tired, you believe it. If it reflects a doubt, you wear it. But what if your mental mirror has cracks in it, warps? What if your inner reflection is just as distorted as your face in a funhouse mirror? You trust the image, even when you shouldn't est. Here's something darker. Maybe you've never actually seen your real face. You've only seen photos, reflections. Maybe your mind has never captured your full presence, just its echoes. And if you've never truly seen yourself, how can you be sure you know yourself? You try to define who you are through labels: friend, child, parent, artist, analyst. But those are just titles the mirror of language gives you. Mirrors inside mirrors. Each role reflects another. Strip them away, and what's left? A question. And that question looks back at you. Consider this fringe theory. What if your reflection has its own consciousness, just slightly behind the veil of perception? it mimics you, because that's all it's allowed to do. But what if, one day, it hesitates, blinks when you don't? What if it learns? And if it does, who has been watching who all these years? Your reflection is always in reverse. Your left is its right. Its smile is your smile, but flipped. There's no real contact. You and it can never touch. So if this is the closest we ever get to meeting ourselves, how alone are we, really? This is the paradox of the mirror. It offers clarity, but breeds illusion. You believe you are the one in control of your gaze, but you cannot look into your own eyes without dividing yourself. There's always the looker and the looked at, always two of you, where you thought there was only one. Philosophers still wonder if true self-perception is even possible. If to be yourself, you must always be slightly unaware of yourself, because too much awareness makes you an observer, not a participant. Like watching yourself laugh in a video and thinking, is that really me? Like remembering a childhood moment and feeling like a stranger inside your own memory. And here comes the twist. What if someone else sees you more clearly than you do? A lover, a friend, a stranger who caught you in a moment of kindness or cruelty. Their memory of you may be more accurate than the image in your own mind, but their perception is also shaped by their own mirror, their own cracks. So which version of you is real? You are a mosaic of echoes. The face in the mirror tonight, the one you're picturing now, lit by soft light, half hidden by shadow. That face will never exist again in exactly this way. Tomorrow, your mood will shift, your skin will change, your perception will tilt, and the mirror will comply, always showing you what you expect to see or what you fear. But listen closely. There's a whisper here, a strange kind of liberation. If the mirror only ever shows you a version, then maybe, just maybe, you are not fixed, not defined. You are not the reflection. You are the one who moves when the mirror is gone. In future sections, we'll return to this idea, the version of you trapped in memory, the self refracted through others' eyes, and the haunting possibility that your reflection holds a secret you've never dared to ask. But for now, let the image soften, let the mirror fade, let the face you wear dissolve into the dark. You stir still here, watching, wondering. You stand at a crossroads that no one else can see. The room is quiet, your body is still, but something inside you moves, an invisible pull towards something you can't name. You replay old decisions, retrace old steps. Why did you choose this path and not another? Was it free will or gravity? Tonight, you start to notice something unnerving. Your life feels self-directed, yet there are decisions that seemed to make themselves, like you were nudged, not forced, just guided. A quiet hand on your back in the shape of a childhood belief, a voice in your head that once belonged to a parent, a teacher, a moment of shame. You walk through your life convinced you are choosing, but what if you are only remembering the decisions that made you? Here's the paradox. Your choices shape your future, but your past shapes your choices. So are you steering the ship, or are you the waves? We like to believe in agency. It's comforting. You like to think that when you choose coffee over tea, you are asserting something true about yourself. But look deeper. Why did you choose the coffee? Maybe your brain was craving a familiar bitterness tied to a memory from a rainy morning 5 years ago. Maybe you saw someone drinking coffee earlier and didn't even notice you noticed. Maybe your dopamine receptors made that decision before your mind caught up. French psychologists call this the illusion of conscious will, that you are not the author of your actions, but rather the narrator who explains them after they've already happened. Your brain acts then tells you why it acted. You think you chose, but that's just the voiceover. You sit in silence now, beginning to sense the full weight of this, like walking a familiar trail, only to realize the trees have been watching you longer than you've been watching them. Your life is not a line, but a loop, a spiral, and somewhere deep inside you, a version of you already knows what you'll choose tomorrow. So how much of your life have you lived without knowing why? Imagine a room with 100 doors. You walk through one. Later you call it fate, or instinct, or free will. But what if that door only appeared because the hallway behind you collapsed the moment you turned around? What if options don't exist until you think about them, and even then, you're just picking the one your past already prepared you for? This brings us to the idea of choice momentum, like a river curving through stone. Your decisions are shaped by old terrain, emotional habits, unquestioned patterns, the songs your parents played, the way your third-grade teacher sighed when you got the answer wrong. These things don't vanish. They sediment, layer by layer. They become the bedrock over which your daily thoughts flow. And here's the creepy part. You often don't even remember the moment that shaped you, but your subconscious does. It whispers, it votes, it nudges you down one path and away from another, and you obey without knowing why. Philosophers still argue whether true choice exists at all. Is freedom just a feeling that emerges from complex systems? Or can something be free even if it's predictable? And if all your choices are influenced, subtly or loudly, by causes outside your control, what's left of you? Let's pull this into metaphor. Imagine your mind is a haunted house, not a scary one, but one filled with the ghosts of decisions past, some gentle, some sharp. Every time you make a new choice, you're walking a hallway lit by flickering memories. You think you're exploring something new, but you're not alone in there. What if your preferences aren't yours? What if the music you love is coded into you by someone you once admired? What if your deepest beliefs are heirlooms, handed down and worn like old jackets, never quite yours, but too familiar to discard? There's a fringe theory called predictive processing. It suggests your brain is not reacting to the world, but constantly predicting it, and then filtering reality to confirm those predictions. In other words, you see what you expect to see. You feel what your brain tells you is likely. You decide what your brain was already leaning toward. So, is consciousness just a clever lie your brain tells itself to make life feel coherent? And if that is true, can you break the loop? Maybe, but it requires an uncomfortable kind of attention. You must begin to question not just what you sit choosing, but why. You must catch the echo in your mind that says, I've always done it this way, and ask, who taught me to? You must learn to feel the gravity of invisible choices. Right now, your body is full of decisions you didn't make. The rhythm of your breath, the beat of your heart, the quiet digestion of a late-night snack. And yet, somehow, you think the decision to watch this video was yours. Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. You wonder, are you drifting or being carried? In a few sections, we'll peel back more of this illusion, the idea of memory as a liar, the question of free will as a performance, and the possibility that your future self is already steering. But for now, you sit with the strange comfort of knowing that not all your choices are made alone. You are the product of 1,000 unseen forces, and yet, somehow, still yourself. Time is supposed to be simple. One thing after another, the sun rises, sets, you get older, and your coffee gets cold. But tonight, in this quiet space between your thoughts and the dark, you begin to feel time slipping, not forward, but sideways. You lie still, but your mind doesn't. It stretches backward, to memories that don't quite belong to you. It leaps ahead to futures that may never happen. And right now, as you listen, you notice something unsettling. You are never really in the present, not fully. By the time you notice the now, it's already then. Here's the paradox. Time feels real, but it refuses to be touched. You can't hold it. You can't see it. All you get are clocks, little machines that impersonate a thing no one's ever seen. A second passes. A minute ticks by. But what is a minute? Is it real, or just a trick your mind plays to keep your soul from floating away? Think about dreams. In dreams, time unravels. You live an entire lifetime. In 10 seconds, you speak to the dead. You skip hours like they're commercials. And when you wake up, your body tells you that only 8 minutes have passed. So which time was true? The dream's eternity, or the ticking of the bedside clock? Some physicists call time a persistent illusion. It's not that time doesn't exist. It's just that we've misunderstood it. We think of it as a line. But what if it's a loop, or a field, or something we invent moment by moment, like a spider spinning a web just ahead of its legs? Your brain doesn't experience time in straight lines. It folds it, compresses it, expands it. Remember waiting in line as a kid? 5 minutes felt like an hour, but now whole months vanish in the space between calendar pages. So, is time speeding up, or are you? Here's a quirky metaphor. You're a traveler on a train, but the train is made of fog. It doesn't move. You do, and the scenery outside, it's built from memory, not landscape. You're not riding through time. You're riding through yourself. So when you say the past, what are you really talking about? A memory, a story you've edited 1,000 times, a feeling that only shows up at 2 a.m. when the light hits the ceiling just right. And the future, that's even trickier. You plan, you predict, you imagine, but nothing in the future is real. It's a guess, a simulation your brain runs to make you feel safe. It hasn't happened. It might not, but still, it shapes everything you do. The present, it vanishes the moment you try to look at it. It's the magician's trick, always somewhere else. You try to touch it, but your hand comes back empty. You chase it, but it fades. You name it, but it changes. Philosophers still wonder, is there such a thing as now? Or is it just the space between what we remember and what we expect? You might try mindfulness, anchoring yourself in breath, in sensation, and for a moment, you do feel present. But even that slips, because the moment you notice your presence, it becomes the past, and the moment you try to stay, you're already moving. There's a fringe theory in physics called block universe. It suggests that all of time, past, present, future, already exists. Right now, in this moment, your great-grandmother is being born. A version of you is yet to be conceived. Another you is dying. It's all there, all at once, but you're only aware of a narrow slice, like flipping through the pages of a book, one line at a time, forgetting you wrote the whole thing. If that's true, are you remembering the past, or are you just turning to the part where your memory lives? And here's something even stranger. You've probably already heard this moment, maybe in a dream, maybe in déjà vu, that eerie feeling that you've been here before. What if you have? What if this exact second is just a loop you return to when the spiral brings you around again? Think of time like a song. Each note exists within the whole. You don't hear it all at once, but it's always there. Past notes still vibrate in memory. Future notes wait in silence. But the song already exists. You're just listening through it, one beat at a time. So why do you feel like time is moving? Because you are. Your mind creates the sensation of movement by noticing change, the color of the sky, the decay of a leaf, the aging of your hands. Without change, time vanishes. So maybe what you call time is really just your brain measuring the rate of decay. But what if you could stop noticing change? Some monks say yes, that time isn't defeated by clocks or calendars, but by stillness, the kind of stillness that doesn't just quiet your body, but your thoughts, your breath, even your sense of self. They speak of timeless awareness, where the moment expands until it swallows you whole. No past, no future, just being. Have you ever felt it? That weightless second before sleep, when your body disappears and your thoughts aren't quite thoughts anymore. That's the doorway, the moment when the mind lets go of the illusion of time. Later, we'll return to this, especially when we explore entropy and the strange mercy of things falling apart. But for now, notice how soft the world feels when you stop tracking it. The fan still hums, your pulse still beats, but you're not counting, you're floating. And somewhere, just ahead of you, the next moment is already waiting, smiling like an old friend you don't remember meeting. You sit at the edge of a map drawn in fading ink. The edges curl, the roads twist into rivers, the landmarks shift when you blink. This is your knowledge, everything you've ever learned, memorized, believed. You think it's solid. You think you know where you are. But tonight, something deeper stirs. What if most of what you know is wrong or worse, half right? The boundary between what you know and what you don't is porous, fragile, and the most unnerving truth of all, you can never actually feel the moment you pass from knowledge into ignorance. You just find yourself lost. Let's start with something simple. You know how to tie your shoes, how to spell your name, how to tell someone you're fine, even when you're not. But where does that knowledge live? Can you point to it? Can you take it out, inspect it, test it without using it? Your understanding is built on metaphor, bricks and ladders, paths and bridges. You imagine knowledge as something stored in a library, or stacked in folders, or floating in a cloud. But what if that's just your brain giving structure to something that's fundamentally chaotic? Here's the strange truth. Your brain doesn't store knowledge like a computer. It weaves it, patterns, associations, scaffolding built from emotion, repetition, narrative. So every time you recall something, you're not retrieving it, you're rebuilding it. Which means every memory is a copy of a copy. And every idea you think you understand may only be the outline of something you once understood or never truly did. There's a popular illusion called the knowledge illusion. You think you understand something, how a zipper works, or a toilet flushes, or democracy functions, until someone asks you to explain it, and then the boundaries show. Your certainty collapses like a sandcastle hit by a question. It's Sat's not stupidity. It's Sat's design. You're wired to feel confident about your models of the world because doubt slows action, but confidence is not accuracy. It's just momentum. This is where things get slippery. Imagine walking through a foggy city. The closer you get to a building, the clearer it becomes, and everything outside your reach remains vague. Now imagine that's your entire worldview. What you call the world is just the things close enough for your mind to grasp. The rest is fog. But here's the twist. You forget the fog exists. You forget that most of the world is hidden, and you start to confuse visibility with truth. Let's make this even stranger. What if something is true but can't be understood? Like a color you can't see, or a sound too high for human ears, or a truth that requires a kind of mind you don't have. Fringe theorists suggest that your brain acts as a filter, not a lens, that consciousness evolved not to reveal the truth, but to simplify it, to give you just enough reality to survive, which means the edges of what you know are not only fuzzy, but deliberately edited. You're not seeing the world as it is. You're seeing it in low resolution, pre-processed, story-shaped form. And that makes you wonder, what's just beyond your comprehension? Is it a new law of physics? A spiritual truth without language? A version of yourself you haven't yet evolved the words to name? Philosophers still debate whether knowledge can ever be complete, whether the universe is knowable, whether there are limits built into the very architecture of thought, like a fish trying to understand the ocean without ever leaving the water, or a mind trying to define itself from the inside. But maybe not knowing isn't a flaw. Maybe it's a frontier. Let's flip the metaphor. You are not a map maker, carefully labeling the world. You are a wanderer, torch in hand, revealing one mossy stone at a time. The map draws itself as you move, and the ink never dries. And here's the strange comfort. If what you know is always changing, then so are you. You are not made of facts. You are made of curiosity, questions, guesses, theories that shatter, beliefs that bend. You are a creature of uncertainty, and that's what makes you capable of growth. So tonight, let yourself float at the edge of knowing, not in fear, but in wonder. Realize that every solid truth you stand on is secretly cracking, and that's okay. That's how the light gets in. Later, we'll dive deeper into this instability, how observation changes reality, how memory lies with love, how even language bends the shape of what you can perceive. But for now, rest in the mystery, because the edge of what you know is exactly where you begin. You stare, and the world stares back, not in a dramatic way, not like a mirror or a movie scene, but quietly, unsettlingly. You think you are observing, taking in reality, being objective, but the longer you watch, the more you realize something unnerving. Watching changes everything. You are the observer, but you are also the disturbance. This is the observer paradox. You've heard about it in quantum physics, where particles change their behavior when watched. When you look, the wave collapses into a particle. Observation alters the outcome. But what no one tells you is that this doesn't just happen in labs. It happens in your life, every moment, every glance. Right now, you're listening, hearing words emerge from the dark. But that act of listening is shaping what the words become for you. If your mind wanders, the story shifts. If you focus, meaning sharpens. If you judge, it stiffens. So who's creating the meaning, me or you? The moment you observe something, you frame it. You choose a lens, whether you know it or not. And that lens changes what you see. It's like watching a child cry. Are they sad, manipulative, tired, honest? You don't just see the tears. You interpret them. You project. You alter the event by naming it. Here's the trap. You think you're neutral. You think you see things as they are, but that's never true. Even looking requires a point of view, and a point of view means bias, which means every observation is part illusion. Now let's turn the gaze inward. When you observe yourself, the same paradox unfolds. You begin to analyze your thoughts, monitor your breath, question your mood. You check in, but something strange happens. Your presence flickers. You are no longer simply being, you are performing. You become both actor and critic. Have you ever caught yourself trying to feel natural, trying to be yourself? The moment you try, you're not, because effort adds a layer. You can't be spontaneous on purpose. You can't be authentic by trying. You can't be the observer and the observed without changing the script. That's the glitch. The more self-aware you become, the more you split in two. Some call it the double mind. One part of you lives the moment. The other part narrates it, edits it, judges it. You dance, and you watch yourself dancing. You speak, and you hear yourself speaking. You live, and you wonder how you're living. And slowly, you begin to wonder which part is the real you. And if observing yourself changes you, have you ever actually met the unobserved you? There's a fringe psychological theory that says true self-awareness is impossible because every time you try to look inward, you create a feedback loop. You watch yourself watching yourself like a hall of mirrors, each reflection twisting the last. You never get to the bottom. There's no solid you, just layers of observation echoing back forever. But here's the deeper twist. If observing changes the world, and you're always observing, then you never see the world as it is, only as you are. Philosophers still ask, is there such a thing as a truly objective experience? Or is every encounter a duet, half the world, half your mind? Maybe this is why some people meditate, not to think, but to stop thinking, not to observe, but to dissolve the observer, to sit still until the loop breaks, to become not a person watching thoughts, but simply the space they pass through. Can you try that now? Close your metaphorical eyes. Step back from the watcher. Let go of the need to understand, to measure, to evaluate. Just be, not for long, just enough to feel what it's like to exist without naming the existence. And maybe, for a breath or two, the world watches you instead. Because here comes the paradox again. If you're always observing, then who or what is observing you? Some mystics claim there is a third presence, not your mind, not your ego, but a silent witness, something beyond thought, beyond identity. It watches the watcher. It holds the whole system. It has no name, no face, no opinion, just presence. And maybe, if you stop trying to find it, it finds you. This is not a thing to solve. It's a place to dwell, like a whisper you hear from across a canyon. You don't need to define it. Just feel the echo. In the next few sections, we should explore more of this recursive spiral, how memory distorts, how the future writes back into the present, how language traps you in thought. But tonight, in this moment, just sit with this. Every time you look at the world becomes a little more like you. And every time you look at yourself, you become a little more like your idea of you. So maybe the truest vision isn't one where you observe, but one where you merge, where there is no watcher, just watching. Memory, the gentle ghost that follows you from room to room, the quiet storyteller you never question. Tonight, you lie beneath its whispering breath, and for the first time, you wonder, what if everything you remember is wrong? Not maliciously, not even consciously, but softly, subtly, like dreams wearing the costumes of truth. You think of memory as your anchor, your history, your proof of identity. Without it, who would you be? A stranger in your own skin, a blank slate floating in time. So you trust memory, you build yourself from it. But memory is not a photograph, it's a painting, and the brush is always wet. Right now, you can recall a moment from childhood, maybe a birthday, a scent, a specific look in someone's eyes. But that memory has traveled through time with you, and time edits. Memory is a game of telephone played across the decades. The original message might have been clear, but every retelling adds noise. The brain doesn't store memories like files in a cabinet. It reconstructs them, rebuilds them on the fly, using whatever fragments it can find: facts, feelings, guesses, associations. It's like trying to recreate a torn letter using only the tone of your voice and the faint smell of ink. Every time you remember something, you change it. You remember the last time you remembered, not the original event. So your memories are versions of versions, layered like old wallpaper, and eventually, even the lie feels like home. This is why two people can live through the same moment and tell completely different stories. Each one is true and each one is false. Here's the paradox: memory is unreliable, but you can't live without it. Consider this: the smell of cinnamon might make you nostalgic, but you can't place why. That's because your brain encoded the memory not as a story, but as a network of sensations. The context is gone, the emotion remains, and sometimes you feel things long after you've forgotten why. There's a term for this: cryptomnesia. When you recall a memory, but believe it's a new thought, it's like plagiarizing yourself without realizing it. You say, "I just had an idea," but it's really a moment from 3 years ago, resurfacing without a label. So how much of your thinking is just recycled memory dressed in new clothes? And what about memories you wish you had? Those glowing childhood scenes you suspect never happened, but feel more real than some of your actual experiences. Did you dream them, invent them, absorb them from movies and stories until they fused with your timeline? Some psychologists call this confabulation, filling in the blanks with something plausible. But maybe it's not deception. Maybe it's the brain doing what it always does, telling stories that keep you alive. Memory, after all, is less about truth and more about continuity. Your brain wants you to feel like a single thread, even if that thread is stitched from mismatched pieces. And here's the darker side: you might not remember what truly happened, but you do remember how it made you feel. The betrayal, the joy, the shame, those feelings calcify, even when the facts dissolve. So your body remembers pain that your mind can't explain. Your gut flinches at situations it doesn't know, because part of you still carries the echo. Philosophers still ask whether the self is anything more than a bundle of memories. If you could erase all your memories, would you still be you? If someone else inherited your memories, would they become you? And if your memories are flawed, edited, distorted, is your identity just a beautiful lie? It's such a chilling thought. Because if memory can be rewritten, so can the story you tell about yourself. You don't have to be the villain or the victim or the one who never finishes things. Maybe that was just a role you got stuck playing in a story someone else started writing for you. Tonight, you can begin again, not by erasing memory, but by meeting it with kindness. You can look back at that version of you, trembling and confused, and say you did your best with what you knew. Let's write the next part together. Later, we still touch this thread again when we talk about the future versions of you that may already exist, and the possibility that they suffer trying to remember you. But for now, rest with this gentle discomfort. Your memory may lie to you, but it also loves you. It holds your best moments like sacred stones. It softens your worst so you can breathe. And even when it falters, even when it fails, it never stops trying to carry you forward. That it's not deception, that it's devotion. So let your past be soft. Let it change. Let it tell its stories, even if the stories aren't real. Because the truth of who you are is never written in stone. It's written in water, somewhere, in a dimension you can't quite touch. A version of you lingers by a window you never looked through. They sip tea you never tasted. They speak words you never said to a person you never met. That version of you still exists in possibility, if not in form, and tonight they miss you. You never met them, but they know you. They are one of your lost futures. Every decision you've made has closed a door, sometimes gently, sometimes with a slam. But what you rarely consider is this: every door closed was once wide open. You stood before countless possible lives, and you chose this, or maybe you didn't choose. Maybe life chose for you. Either way, the path you walk now is only one thread in a tangled web of could-have-beens. And the others? They never vanished. They echo, they tug. You feel it sometimes. That aching familiarity in a city you've never visited. That sudden longing for a career you never pursued. That almost memory of a life you never lived. These are not fantasies. They are whispers from your other selves. And they remember you. Here's the paradox. You are only one version of yourself, but every moment other versions threaten to bloom. There's a fringe theory called the many worlds interpretation. It says every quantum event spawns new realities. In one, you turned left. In another, you turned right. In one, you said yes. In another, you stayed silent. And each decision, each thought, each flicker of attention may have split the world in 2 or 10 or 10,000. If that's true, then your life is not a line, but a web. And somewhere on that web, other yous are weaving. You may never meet them, but you feel their weight. You mourn things you've never lost. You grieve stories that were never written. That's not neurosis. It's memory without a timeline. And sometimes your choices haunt you, not because they were wrong, but because they cut off something beautiful. You left a city. You ended a friendship. You said no to a love that wasn't quite ready. And now you carry the ghost of the person you would have become. But what if those ghosts still live? What if those versions of you are dreaming of you too? The future isn't stuff far. It's steps folded. Think of it like this. Your life is a radio, and each decision tunes the dial. You land on one station, but the others are still broadcasting, faint and persistent, just beyond the static. And sometimes, when you're tired or open or still enough, you catch a fragment of their song. Have you ever felt yourself standing at a moment of choice and sensed a weight you couldn't name, as if somewhere else the other you was begging, choose differently? Take this leap. Don't walk away. You call it intuition, but maybe it's just feedback from the web of yous. This is where things bend toward the poetic, because if all futures exist simultaneously, then time is not a journey forward. It's a blooming inward. You are not moving through time. You are unfolding into it. Philosophers still debate this. Is the future real or merely imagined? Can something that hasn't happened yet reach back and shape the present? If your future self is already suffering, do you feel the ache in your now? And if your future self is free, are they sending you courage? You wonder, can you disappoint the version of you that almost was? Maybe, but not with regret, only with forgetting. You see, these other yous don't need your apology. They only need your attention. They are fragments of your deepest hopes, your strangest longings. They are not failures. They are messages. Sometimes they arrive in dreams, sometimes in stories, sometimes in the eyes of a stranger who lives a life you once imagined. And when they do, they're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to remind you you are still becoming, you are still possible. And that's the miracle of choice. Every time you act, you collapse infinity into one path. That's terrifying and holy and mundane. You chose toast instead of eggs. You chose this voice this night, this story, and somewhere, other versions of you are still exploring the paths you didn't take, not as ghosts, but as mirrors. And they sit, rooting for you. Later, we'll step deeper into this shadow, the hollow space at the center of identity, the self you can set name, the puppet who cut his strings. But for now, feel this. Your future already misses you, and yet it's waiting, patient, curious, unfolding with every breath you take. So breathe deep. Somewhere, someone who looks a lot like you just did the same. There's a hollow space inside you, a quiet center that no thought can touch. You may not notice it during the rush of the day, when your mind is a hive and your body a blur, but at night, when the hum fades and the distractions dissolve, you feel it, not as absence, but as presence, the space where you ends and something else begins. This is the paradox of self. The more you look for it, the less you find. You can list your roles: child, sibling, artist, analyst. You can recall your stories, your memories, your personality quirks. But if you peel them away one by one, what remains? Not your name, that was given to you. Not your thoughts, those rise and fall like weather. Not your beliefs, those were borrowed, shaped, broken, replaced. Not your body, that sits a vessel, ever changing. So you strip it all back, layer after layer, and you stand there, inside yourself, asking, what espace left? It's like trying to see your own eyes without a mirror. You are always just out of reach, because you are the looker, not the looked at, the flame, not the light. And yet you feel real. You feel like someone, even if you can't say who. Eastern traditions call this the witness, the unnameable awareness behind the curtain of thought. It doesn't judge, it doesn't act, it just is. And if you sit still long enough, if you let your thoughts pass like clouds instead of catching them like balloons, you begin to feel it, not yourself, but the hole in the middle of you. The still, silent watcher. This isn't emptiness in the sad sense. It's emptiness in the sacred sense. A space so vast, it holds everything and needs nothing. Like the pause between heartbeats, like the breath between thoughts, like the night sky that holds all stars but is not defined by any of them. There sets a strange comfort here, because if you are not your thoughts, then your thoughts can't trap you. If you are not your story, then your past doesn't own you. If you are not your image, then no mirror can define you. Fringe mystics speak of the unborn self, the idea that beneath all the doing and naming and becoming, there is something untouched, not better, not wiser, just untouched, like the part of the flame that never gets burned. And philosophers still argue over the nature of identity. Is there a core self, or are we just bundles of reactions and preferences, stitched together by the illusion of continuity? If the brain can be reprogrammed, damaged, changed, if memory can be erased or rewritten, then where is the soul in all of that? Some say it doesn't exist. Others say it's the only thing that does. Here's a metaphor to carry. Imagine a stage. On it, actors perform laughter, sorrow, ambition, rage. You've played every role. You've worn every mask. But the stage itself, it's silent, constant, unchanging. You are not the actor. You are the stage, or maybe the space beneath the stage. You don't have to name it. In fact, naming it diminishes it. It's the part of you that existed before you knew what I meant, the part that never flinched when you were hurt, the part that doesn't rise or fall with your moods, the you without content. You feel it most clearly in those strange moments, standing under stars too vast to comprehend, hearing a piece of music that stops time, watching a candle flicker in perfect stillness. In those moments, you vanish, but something deeper remains, a kind of wordless awe. And yet, you still have to return to your story. You still have to wake up and remember your name, pay bills, answer messages, play the roles. That's not wrong. It's necessary. The self is both mask and mystery. You don't have to destroy the surface to know the depth. You just have to remember, beneath every costume, there's a body, and beneath that body, a breath, and beneath that breath, silence. Later, we'll descend even further into the dream logic that forgets to knock, into entropy's strange kindness, into the lie of language itself. But for now, feel the hollow, not as lack, but as possibility. The you that no mirror can show, the you no one else can name, the you that simply is, watching quietly from the center of the storm. There's a knock at the edge of your dream. But when you open the door, there's no one there, just fog, just questions, just the surreal logic of being awake inside something that doesn't quite make sense. And you realize, this isn't a dream. This is your life. Logic is supposed to be the anchor, the thing that holds your thoughts in place. But sometimes it forgets to knock. Sometimes thoughts arrive uninvited, and suddenly you find yourself believing things that don't fit together, don't explain anything, don't follow the rules, and yet they feel true. Welcome to the glitch in the mind. We like to think of our minds as castles made of stone, carefully constructed, well defended, but in reality, they're more like old hotels, each room with different wallpaper, different lighting, a different guest staying the night. Logic is the concierge, trying to make sense of the chaos, but some nights it falls asleep at the desk. This is where dreams enter, and metaphor, and madness, and meaning. Ever had a dream that didn't make sense, but felt more real than reality? A street that turned into a hallway, a stranger who spoke your fears before you voiced them, a version of you that floated just above your waking self. That's the part of your mind that doesn't obey logic, but it doesn't obey nonsense either. It obeys feeling, symbol, mystery. And sometimes that part is right when reason is wrong. You make logical choices all day. You calculate, you weigh pros and cons. You tell yourself stories that make sense. But what about the decisions that came from nowhere? The love you fell into without planning, the fear you couldn't explain, the instinct that screamed when your mind said, "This is fine." What if those weren't irrational moments? What if they were just messages from a deeper kind of logic? There's a theory that your conscious mind is only the tip of the iceberg, a thin film of daylight over a vast ocean of night. Beneath the surface, your brain is processing, predicting, building simulations, and sometimes it solves problems your waking mind couldn't even begin to untangle. It just forgets to tell you how. So the answer arrives without a reason, a truth wrapped in nonsense. You've probably experienced this before, a joke that shouldn't be funny, but is, a coincidence so specific it feels like the universe whispered, a moment of insight that comes not during hard thinking, but in the shower, or while walking, or just as you're drifting off to sleep. This is logic's twin, dream logic, paradox logic, Taoist wisdom, the kind that says the way that can be named is not the true way, the kind that knows when you stop looking, you start seeing, when you stop knowing, you begin to understand. Philosophers still argue about this. Is reason the highest path or the loudest? Is logic the tool or the tyrant? Some ancient traditions believed the mind was a trickster god, clever but not wise, and the heart was the quieter oracle, slow to speak but never wrong. So which one do you trust? You tell yourself stories that are logical. I am this way because of this event. This is right because it feels consistent. But life doesn't follow rules. People contradict themselves. You contradict yourself, and the more tightly you grip your logical narrative, the more life slips through your fingers like smoke. Let's just twist this into metaphor. You live in a house with 1,000 doors. Each room makes sense on its own, but the hallways between them, those are surreal, disconnected, dreams leaking into thoughts, fears stitched to memories, hopes tangled in logic. You don't live in the rooms, you live in the in-between. And in the in-between, logic forgets to knock. So maybe the point isn't to always make sense. Maybe the point is to learn when not to stop demanding order from everything, to let the irrational speak, and to listen with something deeper than understanding. Because not everything needs to be explained. Some things just need to be felt. Later we'll fall even deeper into this soft unraveling, into decay as kindness, into freedom as a trick, into language as a trap. But for now, let your mind loosen, let it drift, let it forget the rules. Use or not falling apart. And when you do, something strange happens. You see patterns you couldn't before. You notice the thread behind the randomness. You remember that all great stories have moments that don't make sense until they do. So tonight, honor the mystery. Let the door swing open even when no one knocks. Sometimes the visitor is you. Everything falls apart. That's not pessimism. That's entropy, the quiet law written into every leaf, every breath, every empire, and every thought. It's the tendency for systems to unravel, for structures to soften, for order to slide, slowly, inevitably into chaos. And yet, here you are, still holding yourself together. Even as the universe forgets, tonight, you begin to feel it, not as threat, but as invitation. Because what if decay isn't cruelty? What if entropy is the universe's secret form of mercy? Let's start with what you know. Heat dissipates, ice melts, stars explode, relationships fade, memory blurs. None of this is failure. It's physics. It's the arc of the world unwinding, always in motion, always leaning into disorder. But that very disorder is what allows change, transformation, growth. Imagine a sandcastle, perfectly sculpted, fragile. The tide comes in and it dissolves. At first glance, that looks like loss. But look again, the sand is free now, no longer frozen in shape, able to become anything, another castle, or just smooth shoreline beneath your feet. You're not made of stone. You're made of shifting sand. You were never built to last. You were built to become. This is the paradox. The things that fall apart often lead you to what's real. A belief crumbles, and you see something truer beneath it. A plan fails, and space opens for a new one. A version of you dissolves, and you realize that version was never the whole story. Entropy clears the stage, so something else can rise. There's a fringe philosophical view that calls this creative destruction, not just in nature or society, but in the psyche. The idea that your identity must occasionally break so that it doesn't become a prison. You have felt this, haven't you? The moment when something in you snapped, when the narrative didn't hold anymore, when grief swept in and wrecked the furniture. And yet, in that silence after the storm, you heard your real voice for the first time. You've been trained to fear falling apart. You're told to stay strong, stay consistent, stay in control. But what if control is the lie? What if the unraveling is sacred? Think of a snake shedding its skin. It's not dying, it's growing. Philosophers still wonder, does meaning require permanence, or is impermanence the very source of meaning? If everything stayed, nothing would matter. If no one died, love would flatten. If nothing aged, beauty would lose its edge. If your life stretched on without change, would you even be alive? Maybe entropy isn't your enemy. Maybe it's your ally, because it breaks the things that no longer serve you. The job you've outgrown, the identity you've outlived, the armor that once protected you, but now weighs too much. It prees your fingers open. It makes you let go. And when you do, when you release the illusion of control, you find something unexpected underneath: relief. There's a comfort in the inevitable, a strange peace in knowing that you don't have to hold it all together, that collapse is part of the pattern, that you can fall apart and still be whole. This is the lesson of the forest floor, where decay feeds new roots, the lesson of stars which die into galaxies, the lesson of tears which carve space for light. And it's not just external. Your body is in constant entropy, cells dying, cells renewing. Your thoughts shift, your stories evolve. The you who listens tonight is not the you from yesterday. And that's not failure, that's life. So when something in you begins to break, don't panic, don't patch it up too quickly. Sit with it. Listen, what is this falling apart trying to make room for? Because entropy doesn't set, just destroy. Later, we'll chase this thread through free will, through language, through the cosmos, staring back. But tonight, let the edges soften. Let the shape of you blur. Let the idea of who you should be dissolve into the truth of who you are, fluid, unfinished, beautiful in your becoming. Let go. You don't need to hold it all. The universe is unraveling, and still the stars burn. You always thought you were holding the strings, making the choices, guiding the steps. But tonight, in the gentle hush of your own awareness, you begin to feel something unsettling tug in the opposite direction, like maybe the strings have always been holding you. You want to be free. Of course you do. Everyone does. You want to choose your life, write your story, carve your own path. But you also want comfort, familiarity, safety. And those don't always play nicely with freedom. So here's the paradox. The more control you seek, the more strings you end up tied in. Freedom becomes the performance of freedom. Let's say you chose your career, your relationships, your beliefs. But did you, or did they choose you through conditioning, timing, emotion, repetition? Did you pick your path, or did it feel so familiar that not choosing it felt wrong? Some fringe philosophers argue that free will is an illusion, a post-rationalization of decisions made deep in the subconscious, that your brain decides first and your mind creates a story afterward to make it all feel intentional, like the puppet who cuts its own strings only to discover another set. There's an experiment. A person is asked to press a button whenever they feel the urge, but scans show the brain prepares for the movement before the person is aware of choosing it. The decision arrives first, then awareness. So what exactly are you in charge of? This doesn't mean you're not conscious. It just means consciousness might be less of a steering wheel and more of a radio tuned to the noise of your own machinery. You think you're driving, but maybe you're narrating. Now that's a strange kind of freedom. The freedom to describe what's already happening. like a character improvising lines in a play that's already been written. But here's the deeper layer. What if freedom isn't about choosing whatever you want, but about choosing how to respond when you realize you're not in control? What if real freedom begins the moment you stop pretending you're in charge? Consider the wind. It doesn't choose where to blow. It doesn't hold itself rigid. It doesn't explain itself. It just moves, adapts, shifts direction without apology. What if you could do that, not by abandoning thought, but by loosening your grip on control? And here comes the old metaphor. You're not the puppeteer, and you're not the puppet. You're the string, that invisible connection between cause and effect, tension and release, force and surrender. You exist in the relationship between things, not just in the things themselves. You don't need to break the strings. You need to dance with them. That's what Taoism whispers. That freedom is not force, it's flow. You align with the current instead of swimming upstream. You stop clenching, and suddenly movement returns. But what about manipulation? What about the invisible hands, the media, the algorithms, the language that nudges you, the beliefs implanted before you could consent? Are those the strings, too? Yes, and recognizing them is the first kind of freedom. The moment you see the puppet master, internal or external, you're no longer blind to the performance. That doesn't mean the strings disappear. It just means you can choose how to respond. You can notice the marketing trick and still buy the thing. You can feel the emotional hook and still choose your next step. You can be played and still play. This is dark psychology's uncomfortable truth. We are all influenced, shaped, nudged, but knowing that doesn't trap you. It equips you. It sharpens your awareness. It teaches you to ask, whose voice is this really? You start to see the strings, the tugs, the familiar pulls toward old patterns. And then something subtle shifts. You begin to pause, to ask before reacting, to breathe between impulse and action. And maybe that's where real freedom lives, not in doing whatever you want, but in noticing the moment you're about to be played and deciding to wait. Later, we still peel this back even more. How language loops you into false certainty. How truth bends the moment it's spoken. How silence might be the only way out. But tonight, feel this. You don't have to cut every string. Just notice them. You don't have to escape the system. Just wake up inside it. You are the puppet and the one who dances anyway. You open your mouth to speak truth, but the moment the words leave you, something shifts. A wobble, a dilution, like trying to pour the ocean through a straw. What you meant is not what you said, and what they heard is not what you meant. Language betrayed you. Tonight, you begin to feel it, the quiet treachery of words. We build our world from language. From the first cry to the final whisper, we shape sound into symbols and call it communication. We name things, define them, explain ourselves and each other. But here's the paradox. Every word clarifies and confines. Because once you name something, it becomes only that. Take love, for example, a small 4-letter box for something that ripples across galaxies and lifetimes. You say love, but what you mean is grief, joy, hunger, memory, surrender, fear, light, all at once. But the word flattens it, makes it manageable, puts it in your pocket so you can carry it around and pretend you understand it. But you don't feel. And neither do they. This is the lie, hidden in language. It feels like connection, but it's often just overlapping guesses. You speak your truth, they hear their version of it, and between the two floats an echo of meaning that's never quite caught. It's not just poetic, it's neurological. Your brain compresses experience into language, reducing the infinite into the symbolic. But once it's compressed, it can't be restored to its original form. You can describe the color red all you want, but no description ever paints the experience. And here's the glitch. We mistake the map for the territory. You say tree, and a picture flashes in the mind, but it's not that tree, not the one that held your childhood secrets, or the one that bent in last week's storm. It's just a placeholder, a symbol, and yet we build entire relationships, nations, religions on those placeholders. Some fringe theorists go further, arguing that language itself limits consciousness, that the structure of grammar locks you into certain thought patterns, that if your language doesn't have a word for something, it's almost impossible to truly think it. You are trapped not by walls, but by sentences. Think about how often you've said, "I'm fine," when you're anything but. The words didn't reflect your truth. They concealed it, or distorted it, or reshaped it, so that even you weren't sure what you really felt anymore. Because words don't just describe reality, they create it. You say, "I always mess things up," and suddenly that becomes your script, your identity, your expectation. A sentence turns into a self, and the more you repeat it, the more real it feels. Philosophers still debate this. Do we use language to express thought, or does language shape what's possible to think? And if we're speaking only in riddles and mirrors, is truth ever truly spoken? There's an old Taoist idea. He who knows does not speak. He who speaks does not know, not because knowledge is secret, but because truth is too vast to be translated. The moment you try to explain it, it slips, not because you're wrong, but because you're using the wrong tools. You wouldn't measure the ocean with a teacup, but that's what words do. And yet, we keep speaking, because silence is terrifying, because connection matters, because we'd rather be misunderstood than not seen at all. So here's the gentle reconciliation. Maybe the point of language isn't to be precise. Maybe it's to gesture, to point toward the inexpressible, to offer clues, fragments, bridges, not perfect communication, just communion. Maybe the truth is like a campfire. You sit around it, you share stories, not because the stories are accurate, but because the warmth is real. So tonight, you let yourself be soft with words. Let them be imperfect. Let them be attempts. Say, "I'm scared," even when it feels vague. Say, "I love you," even when it feels too small. Say what you can, and trust that the space between the words might carry the rest. Later, we'll step through that silence into the void that watches back, into the infinite questions that outlive every answer. But for now, feel this. Language is both the bridge and the gap, the spell and the static. You will never fully say what you mean, but you can mean it anyway. And sometimes that sits enough. You stare into the night sky, not with awe this time, but with a question, one you can't quite name. The stars flicker, the black between them stretches endlessly, and somewhere in your bones you feel it. Something is looking back. Not God, not aliens, not a ghost or a force you've been taught to fear or worship. Just the void, watching, breathing, and for a second, it feels familiar. This is the paradox. The universe appears empty, but it feels full, full of presence, full of silence so thick it hums. You stare into space, and something stares back, not with eyes, but with existence itself. You can't explain it, and that's what makes it real. This isn't loneliness, it's encounter. Let's start simply. The human eye can only see a sliver of the electromagnetic spectrum. The visible light, the colors you name and recognize, is just a narrow band in a vast field of invisible radiation. Infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays, all of it there, all of it around you, all of it unseen. So, how much of reality are you actually perceiving? Maybe 1%, maybe less. Now take that idea and stretch it to the cosmos. You look up and you see stars, distant suns, galaxies. But what you don't see, what makes up most of the universe, is the dark matter, the energy that doesn't shine, the mass that doesn't reflect, the void between the notes. In music, silence is what gives shape to sound. In the universe, emptiness is what gives space for stars to burn. The void is not absence, it is the condition for presence. And yet, we fear it. The blackness, the unknown, the quiet that won't answer back. We fear it because it reminds us how small we are, how temporary, how weightless. But what if smallness isn't a flaw? What if it's the gift? There's a fringe theory, panpsychism, that suggests consciousness is not exclusive to humans or animals, but a fundamental feature of the universe, that even particles feel in some sense, that awareness is not an emergent property, but a starting point, which means the void may not be empty, it may simply be quiet, and quiet does not mean lifeless. You felt this before, in nature, in solitude, in a room where something invisible shifts the air. You call it energy, intuition, mood, but maybe it's something more. Maybe it's the silence watching back. Philosophers still ponder this. When you look at the stars, what are you actually seeing? Ancient light, echoes of explosions that happened billions of years ago. The stars you admire might not even exist anymore. You are seeing what was, not what is. So your gaze is always one way, a form of time travel. But if you can look back in time, can time look back into you? You feel the enormity of that question stretch inside you. It's not something you can answer. It's something you carry, like a whisper you never fully hear, like a touch that doesn't reach the skin, but changes you anyway. Here's a metaphor to hold. Imagine your consciousness as a flashlight in a cave. It only illuminates what it points to, but the cave is vast, and it remembers. The walls carry echoes. Your light is not the only one that has passed here. You feel them, past lives, forgotten thoughts, moments that never quite leave. You walk through the dark, and the dark walks with you. Maybe the void isn't watching in the way you watch. Maybe it doesn't see. Maybe it feels. Maybe every question you ask is recorded in the fabric of space. Maybe every moment of wonder is added to a chorus that the stars hum when no one's listening. This isn't science. This isn't religion. This is something quieter, something personal, a mystery not meant to be solved, but kept. Because if the universe is alive, not biologically, but experientially, then every time you breathe in the night, you are breathing it with the cosmos. And if that test's true, you are never really alone. Later, we'll descend into the final spiral, the thought that cannot be finished, the endless question that asks itself. But for now, sit beneath the sky. Let the silence be full. Let the blackness be bright. Let the void watch you back. You, small flicker of light. You, ancient awareness wrapped in flesh. You, star stuff, learning to listen. The cosmos does not answer, but it doesn't leave either. You reach for the last thought, and it slips through your fingers like mist, not because it's elusive, but because it was never meant to be held, only felt, only followed. Tonight, you arrive at the edge of understanding and you realize the edge is all there is. You will never finish this thought, and that's the point. Every answer you find opens a new question. Every conclusion trembles under closer attention. You climb the mountain only to see more mountains. You solve the riddle and discover another hidden inside it, like a dream within a dream, and for a while it's exhausting, but then it becomes beautiful. Let's start with something familiar. You've asked yourself before, what's the meaning of life? A big, heavy question, ancient, worn, the kind of question that hums behind every other one. You search in books, in faces, in rituals, in science. You build theories. You tear them down. You start again. But what if the meaning isn't a single answer, but the act of asking? What if your life is not a puzzle to solve, but a question to live? There's a strange comfort in that, in being a riddle without a solution, a sentence that never quite ends. You are not a conclusion. You are a curiosity, and curiosity moves. This is the paradox. To be alive is to never be finished. You are not a statue. You are not a statement. You are a question mark walking through a world of temporary answers. Every version of you, from childhood to now to later, has believed different things, wanted different things, feared different things, and each version thought it had figured something out, but time gently corrected it. You think you're close, you think you're clear, and then another layer peels away. Another truth contradicts the last, and still you go on. Not because you're lost, but because being unfinished is a form of freedom. There's a fringe metaphor in mathematics, the idea of infinite regress. You try to define a word using other words, which must be defined with still more words, and so on. You try to explain the mind using the mind. You try to reach the origin, only to discover that every beginning is built on another. And so, the spiral continues. Philosophers still wrestle with this. They build elaborate systems. They seek first principles. They try to find a bottom floor, a bedrock, a place to rest. But every time they get close, the floor gives way, not into chaos, but into mystery. You're not broken because you don't have all the answers. Think of it this way. If you knew everything, truly everything, would you still wake up in the morning? Would you still reach out? Would you still wonder who might cross your path? What might surprise you? What love or fear or beauty might emerge? Or would it all collapse into certainty and freeze? Mystery isn't the absence of knowledge. It's the atmosphere that makes knowing worthwhile. And the self, the one you've been peeling back, dissecting, dissolving all night, is not an object, it's a direction. You are not a destination. You are a movement. And movements don't end. They echo, they evolve, they vanish and reappear in different forms. You've probably felt this in quiet moments. The sudden realization that you are different than you were, without knowing exactly when it happened. The fact that you change when you're not looking, that growth happens like shadows at dusk, slowly, then all at once. So maybe the goal is to find yourself. Maybe it sets to lose yourself well, to lose yourself in questions, in kindness, in laughter, in uncertainty, to fall into the unknown, not with fear, but with faith, not faith in something specific, just faith in the motion, the becoming, the unfolding, the whisper behind every whisper. What next? This is the softest truth. You will never finish this thought, not because you failed to think hard enough, but because thought is a door, and behind that door is another, and behind that a window, and behind that a window, Later? There is no later. You've arrived. You've always been arriving. You will never stop arriving. And that is the miracle. Wind down. Now the questions dissolve into quiet. The thoughts no longer ask to be finished. They float like feathers on breath, like the soft drift of fog over water. You've gone far tonight, deeper than logic, past language, beyond self. And now you let it all go. You are not an answer waiting to be found. You are a song still being written, a horizon that never resolves into a single point, the space between stars, the echo after meaning. Let your thoughts grow slow. Let your mind loosen like a hand uncurled. Let the need to understand fade into the simple rhythm of your breath. You sit followed, the spiral this far. You don't need to climb back. You can rest here, where the edges blur and the silence holds you. Because this hush is where the question ends or begins. Or maybe they said the same thing. End of script. Sweet dreams.